The unexpected prisoner. The metallic walls of the Zarthian detention complex hummed with an eerie, low-frequency vibration that seemed to penetrate Garrett Holloway's very bones. He sat motionless in the sterile containment cell, his muscular frame folded into an uncomfortable position that betrayed nothing of the calculated mind working behind his seemingly defeated exterior. 3 standard solar cycles had passed since his capture during the ill-fated reconnaissance mission to the outer rim of the Centauri cluster. The Zarthian interrogators had been relentless, their multi-jointed appendages manipulating complex translation devices that attempted to break down his psychological defenses. But Garrett was not just any human prisoner. He was a veteran of the Interstellar Expeditionary Force, trained to resist beyond human limitations. The cell was a marvel of alien engineering, transparent walls that shifted between opacity and translucency, molecular restraints that could instantly solidify to prevent movement, and environmental controls that could simulate any planetary condition. To the Zarthians, it was the pinnacle of containment technology. To Garrett, it was simply another puzzle waiting to be solved. His captors had underestimated him from the moment he was brought aboard. The reptilian creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall with iridescent scales and multiple sets of eyes, believed their technological superiority made them invincible. They spoke freely in front of him, believing their complex linguistic patterns were incomprehensible to a human. They were wrong. Garrett had spent his entire career as a xenolinguistic specialist, his brain adapted to parsing complex communication patterns. While they thought he understood nothing, he was meticulously collecting every fragment of their language, every nuance of their communication. The cell's latest scan had just completed, a routine procedure that happened every solar rotation. A thin beam of blue-green light swept across his body, analyzing everything from his cellular structure to his psychological state. The Zarthians were nothing if not thorough. Subject continues to demonstrate anomalous resistance parameters. A mechanical voice translated from the primary communication node. Psychological profile indicates unprecedented neural plasticity and stress response mechanisms. Garrett allowed himself the slightest hint of a smile. They were studying him as much as he was studying them. The detention complex was a marvel of technological integration. Suspended in the void between 2 neutron stars, it was designed to be escape-proof. Gravitational dampeners, quantum entanglement communication systems, and multi-dimensional security protocols made it a fortress that had never known a successful prisoner breakout. But the Zarthians had never encountered a human like Garrett Holloway. His mission had been simple: gather intelligence about the expanding Zarthian territories that threatened human colonization zones. A routine reconnaissance that had gone catastrophically wrong when his stealth craft was detected by an advanced sensor grid. Now he was their prize specimen, a living example of human adaptability that both fascinated and terrified his alien captors. The cell's environmental controls began to shift, a pre-programmed sequence that would test his physiological responses. Temperature dropped rapidly, simulating the Arctic conditions of a distant moon. Garrett's breathing remained steady, his muscular frame showing no signs of distress. "Remarkable," whispered a junior researcher through the translation device. "No measurable stress response to extreme temperature variations." What they didn't know was that Garrett had spent 2 years in survival training on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. This was nothing compared to those harsh conditions. Every moment, every scan, every interaction was an opportunity. The Zarthians believed in absolute control, in technological superiority. They saw humans as primitive, adaptable, but ultimately insignificant in the grand cosmic hierarchy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. As the cell's diagnostic sequence continued, Garrett's eyes, a steel gray that seemed to hold centuries of human determination, began to calculate. Not with panic or desperation, but with the cold, methodical precision of a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The detention complex might think it held him, but Garrett Holloway knew something they didn't. In the vast, unforgiving universe, Humanity's greatest strength was its ability to turn any situation into an opportunity for survival. And his opportunity was coming. Escape and revelation. The detention complex's routine was as predictable as it was intricate. Every solar rotation, a series of diagnostic procedures swept through the containment units, each designed to analyze and categorize the prisoners with machine-like precision. For Garrett Holloway, these moments were anything but passive. During the latest scanning sequence, he had been carefully observing a microscopic inconsistency in the molecular restraint system. Most would have overlooked the nearly imperceptible flicker, a quantum fluctuation that repeated with mathematical regularity. But Garrett was not most prisoners. His background in xenotechnology and survival training had taught him that every system, no matter how advanced, had a weakness. The Zarthian technology was no exception. The research team continued their observations, their multi-jointed appendages manipulating holographic interfaces that displayed Garrett's physiological data. Subject demonstrates unprecedented neural adaptation. One of the lead researchers commented in their complex clicks and chirps language. Cellular regeneration rates are 247% above standard mammalian parameters. What they didn't realize was that Garrett was doing his own research. He had mapped the communication patterns, understood the shift changes, and identified the precise moment of maximum vulnerability in their security protocols. The molecular restraints that could instantly solidify were his primary focus, a system so advanced it was considered foolproof. But nothing was truly foolproof. As the next diagnostic cycle began, Garrett's muscles tensed imperceptibly. The blue-green scanning beam swept across his body, its quantum-level analysis probing every cellular structure. Most prisoners would appear rigid, defeated, but Garrett's stillness was calculated. The quantum fluctuation appeared again, a microscopic gap in the molecular restraint's integrity field. Most would miss it, but Garrett had been waiting. In a movement so precise it seemed almost inhuman, he exploited the momentary weakness. His body, conditioned through years of extreme survival training, became fluid. Muscles shifted, bones seemed to compress, and he began to slide through what should have been an impenetrable molecular barrier. Alarms blared instantly. The detention complex's AI system recognized the breach milliseconds after it began. Containment breach in Sector 7. The mechanical translation echoed through the complex. Subject demonstrating unprecedented molecular manipulation. Garrett's escape was not about brute force. It was a symphony of calculated movements, understanding of alien technology, and sheer human adaptability. The Zarthian guards, initially stunned by the impossibility of what they were witnessing, scrambled to respond. The complex's internal defense systems activated. Gravitational dampeners shifted, attempting to immobilize Garrett. But he had anticipated this. Years of training on high-gravity planets had prepared him for extreme environmental challenges. His body moved with a dancer's grace, absorbing and redirecting the gravitational forces. Where an ordinary human would have been crushed, Garrett transformed the energy, using the complex's own defensive systems against itself. Zarthian guards converged, their advanced exo-armor bristling with energy weapons. But Garrett was no longer where they expected him to be. He had learned their movement patterns, understood their tactical protocols. Impossible. One of the senior guards clicked through the translation device. No organic entity can manipulate molecular structures at this level. But Garrett was proving them wrong with every passing second. The detention complex was designed to be a technological marvel, a prison that could hold the most dangerous entities in the known galaxy. Its creators had considered every possible scenario of escape, except for a human who refused to be contained. As alarms continued to blare and defense systems scrambled, Garrett Holloway moved through the complex like a phantom. Each movement was a calculated risk, each decision a testament to human resilience and adaptability. The Zarthians were about to learn a critical lesson. Technological superiority meant nothing against the human will to survive. And Garrett was just getting started. Pursuit and transformation. The detention complex transformed into a labyrinth of chaos. Garrett Holloway moved through its intricate corridors with a predator's precision, each step a calculated risk that challenged the very foundations of Zarthian technological supremacy. Pursuit was immediate and relentless. The complex's advanced tracking systems projected holographic representations of Garrett's potential movement paths, quantum algorithms calculating every possible escape route. But algorithms, no matter how complex, couldn't predict human unpredictability. Target is exhibiting non-standard navigation patterns, a senior tactical coordinator chirped, mandibles clicking with frustration. The translation device rendered his words with a mix of mechanical precision and alien emotion, biological responses outside known parametric ranges. What the Zarthians didn't understand was that Garrett was more than just a prisoner. He was a product of humanity's most advanced survival training programs, individuals selected and molded to adapt, survive, and overcome in the most extreme conditions imaginable. The detention complex's internal architecture was a marvel of alien engineering. Corridors that could reconfigure themselves, walls that could become floors, gravity systems that could shift instantaneously. It was designed to be a perfect, adaptive prison. Garrett saw it as a playground. His escape wasn't just physical. It was a psychological warfare that the Zarthians never anticipated. He used their own systems against them, understanding that technology, no matter how advanced, was ultimately predictable. A squad of elite Zarthian pursuit units converged from multiple vectors. Their exo-armor was a technological marvel, quantum-locked plates that could withstand direct energy weapon impacts, neural-linked combat systems that allowed for near-instantaneous tactical coordination. Garrett had studied their tactics during his imprisonment. Every scan, every observation, had been a lesson. As the first pursuit unit rounded the corner, Garrett was already moving. Not running, that would suggest fear or desperation. His movement was deliberate, almost casual, as if he was simply walking through a park rather than navigating an impossible escape. The first energy weapon discharge came, a pulse of concentrated quantum energy designed to immobilize organic matter instantaneously. Most biological entities would be frozen, their neural systems completely disrupted. Garrett's body responded differently. Years of genetic optimization, survival training, and medical augmentation allowed him to do something impossible. As the energy pulse struck, his cellular structure didn't just resist, it adapted. Microscopic neural pathways rewired themselves in milliseconds, transforming the weapon's energy into a form of biological acceleration. The Zarthian pursuit team watched in horrified fascination as their target not only survived the immobilization pulse, but seemed to become faster, more focused. Recalibrating weapon systems. The lead unit commander barked, but Garrett was already moving. He wasn't just escaping. He was teaching them a lesson about human potential. The detention complex's internal defense systems activated secondary protocols. Entire sections of the facility began to reconfigure, walls becoming floors, gravity shifting, environmental conditions changing to create maximum difficulty for the escapee. But difficulty was a language Garrett was fluent in. Whereas Zarthian would see an impossible obstacle, he saw an opportunity. A collapsing corridor became a launch point. A gravitational shift became a method of momentum redirection. Each challenge was simply another puzzle to be solved. He's rewriting the parameters of engagement, one of the research observers noted, a note of something almost like respect entering their translated communication. This isn't just an escape, it's a demonstration. And that was exactly what Garrett intended. The pursuit continued, a deadly dance of technological marvel and human determination. The detention complex, once considered the most secure facility in the known galaxy, was being systematically dismantled by a single human prisoner. The Zarthians were about to learn a fundamental truth about humanity. When cornered, humans don't just survive. They evolve. And Garrett Holloway was evolving with every passing moment. Technological improvisation. The detention complex had become a battlefield of innovation. Garrett Holloway understood something the Zarthians had never comprehended. Technology was just a tool, and humans were masters of improvisation. As pursuit teams continued their relentless chase, Garrett had already begun transforming the very environment around him into a survival mechanism. The complex's advanced systems, designed to be an impenetrable prison, were becoming his greatest allies. A maintenance corridor presented an opportunity. Quantum communication nodes lined the walls, intricate networks of data transmission that formed the nervous system of the entire facility. Most prisoners would see these as simply technological infrastructure. Garrett saw them as weapons. His hands moved with surgical precision, fingers finding microscopic access points that would be invisible to Zarthian scanners. Years of xenotechnology training had taught him that every system had vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities were often hidden in plain sight. Recalibrating pursuit vectors. The mechanical translation of a Zarthian tactical commander echoed through the corridor. Target continues to demonstrate unprecedented system manipulation. What they didn't realize was that Garrett was doing more than just evading capture. He was rewriting their entire technological framework. The communication nodes began to shift. Subtle at first, just minor signal disruptions that most would dismiss as routine interference. But Garrett was systematically creating a cascading failure within the complex's defensive infrastructure. Gravity fields flickered. Holographic tracking systems began to produce multiple conflicting target projections. The pursuit teams found themselves chasing phantom signatures, their supposedly infallible technology turning against them. "Impossible," muttered a junior research analyst, her translator rendering her clicks and chirps into a tone of pure disbelief. No biological entity should be able to penetrate quantum communication matrices at this level. But Garrett wasn't just penetrating the system. He was conversations with it. Every alien technology had a language, a fundamental communication protocol. Most saw these as rigid, immutable codes. Garrett understood they were more like living systems, with their own logic, their own vulnerabilities. He pulled a small device from a hidden compartment, a remnant from his initial mission, modified during his imprisonment. It looked like nothing more than a simple communication transponder, but in Garrett's hands, it became something far more dangerous. The device began to emit a complex series of quantum frequencies. Not an attack, not a disruption, but a conversation. He was speaking to the complex's infrastructure in its own language, exploiting communication protocols that the Zarthians believed were completely secure. Entire sections of the detention complex began to reconfigure. Walls shifted, gravitational fields destabilized. The pursuit teams found themselves fighting not just Garrett, but the very environment they once controlled. Target is demonstrating capabilities beyond current xenobiological understanding, the senior tactical coordinator reported, a hint of something almost like respect entering the translated communication. Garrett moved through the transforming corridors with fluid grace. Each movement was a calculation, each decision a strategic maneuver that turned the complex's own systems against itself. He wasn't just escaping. He was teaching a lesson about the true nature of intelligence and adaptability. The Zarthians had designed the perfect prison. They had never considered that the prisoner might view the prison itself as just another system to be understood, manipulated, conquered. As emergency protocols cascaded through the complex, Garrett Holloway continued his impossible journey. The detention facility was no longer just a prison. It had become a living testament to human potential. And he was far from finished. Psychological warfare. The detention complex had become a battlefield of minds, not just technology. Garrett Holloway understood that true escape was as much about psychological strategy as it was about physical manipulation. As the Zarthian pursuit teams regrouped, their communication network still reeling from his previous interventions, Garrett began to implement a more subtle form of resistance. He wasn't just fighting against capture. He was dismantling their entire conceptual understanding of imprisonment. Deep within the complex's neural monitoring systems, he had planted seeds of confusion, subtle psychological triggers that would make the hunters question their own perceptions, their own capabilities. Where most prisoners would focus on physical escape, Garrett was attacking the very foundation of their pursuit. Tracking algorithms compromised. A tactical coordinator reported, mandibles clicking with growing frustration. Target is generating multiple conflicting psychological signatures. What they didn't realize was that Garrett was rewriting the rules of engagement entirely. He had studied the Zarthian psychological profile during his imprisonment. Their hive-mind approach to problem-solving was both their greatest strength and their most significant weakness. Individual initiative was suppressed, replaced by collective decision-making that was predictable, almost mechanical. Garrett was about to show them the power of individual human unpredictability. Strategic holographic projections began to malfunction. Where pursuit teams expected to see clear targeting information, they now encountered fragmentary images that played with perception. A corridor that seemed straight would suddenly appear to bend. A pursuit path would split into multiple equally convincing routes. The Zarthians prided themselves on their technological superiority, but technology was only as good as the minds interpreting it. Psychological resonance fields are destabilizing. Another researcher noted, a tremor of uncertainty entering their translated communication. Target is generating cognitive dissonance across multiple tracking matrices. Garrett had transformed the entire detention complex into a psychological maze. Each movement was calculated not just for physical escape, but to chip away at the collective confidence of his pursuers. Memory banks began to receive conflicting data streams. Pursuit logs showed impossible movement patterns. Communication channels became flooded with subtle, almost imperceptible contradictions that would drive a hive-mind system to increasing levels of confusion and doubt. He wasn't just escaping. He was teaching a lesson about the nature of individual consciousness. The Zarthian leadership began to debate. Their rigid hierarchical structure, usually a source of strength, now became a liability. Each level of command received slightly different interpretations of Garrett's movements, creating a cascade of miscommunication and strategic paralysis. "We are dealing with more than a prisoner," the senior tactical coordinator finally admitted. "We are confronting a fundamental challenge to our understanding of biological limitation." Garrett moved through the complex like a ghost, leaving behind not just technological disruption, but a profound psychological challenge. Each step was a statement about human potential, the ability to turn imprisonment into an opportunity for transformation. The detention complex, once considered the most secure facility in the known galaxy, was being dismantled not through brute force, but through the most powerful weapon humanity possessed, an adaptable, innovative mind. And Garrett Holloway was just getting started. Humanity's triumph. The detention complex had become a living nightmare for the Zarthian civilization. What began as a simple prisoner containment had transformed into the most significant challenge they had ever faced. Garrett Holloway stood at the precipice of something larger than his personal escape. He was making a statement about the nature of human potential, a declaration that would echo through the known galaxy. The final confrontation was not about physical escape. It was about proving a fundamental truth about humanity. Deep within the complex's central command center, the highest-ranking Zarthian leaders convened. Their multi-jointed forms moved with an agitated rhythm, communication nodes pulsing with frustrated energy. "The human has compromised not just our systems," the primary strategist clicked through the translation matrix, "but our entire conceptual understanding of biological limitation." Garrett had systematically dismantled every defensive mechanism, not through brute force, but through an intricate dance of technological and psychological manipulation that defied everything the Zarthians believed about imprisonment. As emergency protocols cascaded through the facility, Garrett prepared for his final move. The detention complex was more than a prison now. It was a battlefield of ideas, of species potential. The central quantum core began to destabilize, not through external attack, but through the subtle manipulations Garrett had been implementing since his initial capture. Each communication node, each gravitational control system became a potential point of failure. "Impossible," the senior tactical coordinator repeated, a phrase that had become a mantra of disbelief. But impossibility was a concept Garrett Holloway had never acknowledged. The facility's primary defensive systems began to collapse. Gravitational fields fluctuated wildly. Communication networks fragmented. What was once the most secure detention facility in the known galaxy was now falling apart from within. And at the center of it all was a single human, proving that adaptability was the most powerful weapon in existence. As the complex began its final descent into chaos, Garrett made his ultimate statement. He wasn't just escaping. He was showing the Zarthian civilization the true meaning of resilience. The quantum core erupted in a cascade of energy, but not in destruction. Instead, it transformed, a brilliant display of technological and biological potential that defied every known law of physics. Zarthian leaders watched in stunned silence as Garrett Holloway emerged not as a prisoner, but as a testament to human capability. "We have fundamentally misunderstood them," the primary strategist finally admitted. The translation matrix carried a tone of something close to respect. Humanity is not just another species to be categorized. They are a force of adaptation beyond our comprehension. The detention complex, once considered the pinnacle of technological imprisonment, had become a monument to human potential. As emergency systems initiated final protocols, Garrett's journey was more than an escape. It was a message to every civilization in the known galaxy. Humanity would not be contained. Humanity would not be understood through conventional means. Humanity would always find a way. The stars themselves seemed to bear witness to a truth now undeniable. When cornered, humans did not just survive. They transformed.